Renting is throwing money away. That is what we have been told for the past couple of years. Our parents have told us this. You should always get onto the property ladder. But in this video, I'm going to break down the maths behind whether renting is better or buying is better, and we're going to pretty much factor in everything. But as a disclaimer, I do want to say that there are specific variables in this video, and sometimes renting can be better, sometimes buying can be better. It really depends on your own specific situation and examples that you take. This video, take it with a pinch of salt, because we are basically making up dummy numbers and analyzing things that might not be applicable to you. So everybody does say renting is throwing money away, but there's something nobody seems to ask. Are you not throwing away money when you're paying the mortgage interest? Let's say you're paying £200,000 in interest to the bank. Is that not throwing money away? Well, it actually is. And people seem to forget that. What about stamp duty? What about maintenance? What about solicitor's fees? What about estate agent fees? Everybody forgets. And what about opportunity cost? What could your deposit have earned if it was, invested into something else? So we're going to do this properly. We're going to look at two scenarios. Number one, renting and buying a £400,000 house as a first-time buyer. And scenario two, we're going to look at a £1 million house as a renter and a buyer. We're going to factor in pretty much everything from mortgage interest, mortgage principal, stamp duty, maintenance, insurance, buying and selling costs, rent increases, house price appreciation, stock market returns, investment fees, taxes, and the opportunity cost of your deposit. We're also going to assume that people's salaries increase over time with the renter and the buyer, so it is pretty fair. So let's do the maths. So let's establish our assumptions for this video. Number one, both the buyer and renter are basically doing it over a 10-year period. We'll assume a mortgage interest rate of 5.66% with a 30-year mortgage. We'll assume that house prices increase 3% annually and rent increases 3.3% annually. And our diversified stock market portfolio generates a 7% annual return before investment costs, and we'll allow approximately 0.25% for investment fees, leaving 6.7% annually. We're also going to budget approximately 1% of the property value per year for maintenance, and we'll assume a salary increase of about 4% per year. We're also going to assume that both people start on the exact same salary. They both invest, let's say, 15% of their available income, and their normal investment contribution increases by 4%. So these investments essentially cancel each other's out when we're deciding whether the housing decision created more wealth. The renter only gets one additional investment, whatever they save, because renting costs less than owning. Keep that in mind. So let's look at scenario one, your £400,000 house. Let's say you found your first home. It's £400,000. You've got a 10% deposit, which is £40,000. Your mortgage is £360,000, and with our mortgage interest rate, it's roughly £2,080 per month. And this is where people usually say, why would I pay £1,800 in rent when I could just pay £2,080 when I actually own the house? And that's because £2,080 isn't actually the cost of owning the house. We need to dig a bit deeper. First of all, that £40,000 deposit. Your deposit isn't money you've lost. You've converted that £40,000 cash into £40,000 worth of property equity. We then have stamp duty. As an eligible first-time buyer, you'll pay stamp duty of about £5,000. Then let's allow £4,000 for solicitors, surveys, mortgage fees, valuations, searches, and moving. So you'll need about £49,000 upfront, but only £40,000 of that becomes equity, and so £9,000 is transaction cost. Now let's say that equivalent property rents for £1,800 per month. Our renter needs a tenancy deposit of about 5 weeks, so that's £2,077, and that deposit is refundable. So I'm not counting that as a cost, but we obviously can't invest that. So while the buyer ties up £49,000, the renter ties up about £2,077, leaving approximately £46,923 available to invest immediately. That is the first major advantage of renting, which is opportunity cost. So our homeowner pays approximately £2,080 mortgage, and let's approximately budget £333 a month initially for maintenance, plus building insurance. So let's call their initial housing cash outflow approximately £2,445 per month, whereas the renter is £1,800. So initially the renter saves approximately £645 a month, and what happens to that £645 is it's invested into the stock market. But we're not going to assume it's £645 forever because rent increases, etc. So we're basically just going to use the calculation owner's housing cost minus renter's housing cost equals the extra renter investment. So if that investment becomes 500, they invest 500. If it becomes 300, they invest 300. That's the fair comparison. Now imagine they both earn £60,000. Let's say both of them invest 15% of their available income. Their salary increases by 4% per year. Their normal investments increase too. So maybe they're investing £500 a month today, next year perhaps 520, and then the year after that 541, and so on. Both people do this. The homeowner doesn't magically stop investing because they bought a house. The renter doesn't get a special advantage because their salary increases. The only extra investment we're giving the renter is the money specifically saved through renting. So think about it like this. Buyer's wealth equals property equity plus normal investments. Renter's wealth equals property of unused deposit and avoided purchasing costs plus normal investments plus every pound saved because renting was cheaper. Because both people's normal salary-based investments are identical, they essentially cancel each other out. Now we're actually comparing the houses. Let's jump forward 10 years. Our £400,000 house grows at 3% annually. It's now worth £538,000. Our homeowner has also been paying down their mortgage. Over 10 years, they've made roughly £250,000 in mortgage payments, but here's the number that actually shocks people. Out of that, £188,000 was interest. Only £62,000 reduced the mortgage. So after 10 years, they still owe roughly £298,000. So the property value is £538,000 minus the mortgage, which is £298,000. So that's approximately £240,000 worth of equity. Then let's assume we sell and pay estate agent fees and legal costs. We're roughly left with about £230,000, plus whatever normal salary-linked investments both people have accumulated. Meanwhile, let's look at our renter. They started by investing roughly £46,900. They then invested the monthly difference between renting and owning. Let's say their rent increased, their contributions changed accordingly, their portfolio compounded, and remember, their normal salary-based investing has also increased as their salary increased. But the homeowner is doing the exact same thing, let's assume. Under our assumption, the renter's housing-related investment pot ends up in the region of £160,000, compared with roughly £230,000 of net housing equity for the buyer. So under this assumption, buying actually wins by somewhere around £60,000 to £70,000. And there is one major reason why. It's because of leverage. Our buyer only initially put £40,000 into the property, but they're getting the price appreciation of a £400,000 asset. That is incredibly powerful, especially when property prices rise. Now let's take a look at the £1 million house, because this is where things get more interesting. So if you want to buy a £1 million house, let's assume you put down a 20% deposit, which is £200,000. So the mortgage is £800,000. We will be paying approximately £4,623 per month on the mortgage, but the transaction costs become much more painful. We will be paying stamp duty of £41,250, and then let's allow about £6,000 for solicitors, surveys, mortgage fees, etc. So the total cash needed up front is £247,250. Insane. And only £200,000 of that becomes property equity. The rest is largely transaction cost. Let's assume we can now rent the equivalent house for £4,000 per month. The renter roughly needs about £4,615 as a deposit, which is the 5-week tenancy deposit. Again, it's not an expense, it's refundable, but it's just temporarily tied up. So instead of using £247,250 to purchase a property, the renter can invest it immediately. So now let's look at the monthly difference. The mortgage is £4,623. Let's assume maintenance is £833 per month initially. Buildings insurance and other ownership costs can, push it towards £5,500 per month. Let's just say £4,000 a month is the rent. The difference initially is about £1,500 per month. So what does our renter do? They invest that. Let's say next year rent rises, we recalculate. Next year the maintenance changes, we recalculate. Every month whatever the renter saves, it gets invested. And again, let's say the salaries both increase, investment contributions increase, etc. After 10 years, our £1 million property grows at 3%. It is worth approximately £1.344 million. After selling costs, we've probably got about £660,000 of net equity plus your normal investments that the homeowner has made. Now the renter, they started with roughly £242,600 invested. Then they invested every single month, those investments compounded, and they also made the same salary-linked investments as our homeowner. Their housing-related investment portfolio ends up somewhere around £640,000. So under these particular assumptions, the buyer has £660,000 and the renter has £640,000. So buying wins, but only by around £20,000. So on a £1 million property over 10 years, that is incredibly close. But now I'm going to break my own model because truly this model sucks. If we change our assumptions just slightly, for example, let's say the stock market returns 9%, renting could easily win in both situations. Suppose house prices increase by 5%, buying could absolutely destroy renting. Suppose the housing prices only increase by 1%, renting becomes much more attractive. Suppose mortgage rates fell dramatically when you refinance, buying completely improves. Suppose your £1 million house can actually be rented for only £3,000 a month, renting becomes incredibly interesting. Suppose the equivalent rent is £5,500. Buying suddenly looks much better. So the important number might not actually be how expensive is the house, it might be what is the rent to price ratio. A £1 million house that rents for £3,000 a month is completely different financially from a £1 million house renting for £6,000 per month. And also, we haven't forgotten about tax. Your main residence has a huge potential advantage. Provided you meet all of the conditions, your main home can generally qualify for private residence relief, meaning you do not pay any capital gains on that appreciation because it is a house that you personally live in. Investments are different because you can use your ISA, but that depends on how much is in your ISA, how much your allowance you've used, because again, you only can put £20,000 per year into your ISA annually. You simply can't just put, your £48,000 deposit or, your £200,000 deposit into your ISA overnight, because you just can't. I'm assuming you've already got it in your ISA. But let's forget the spreadsheet for a minute and forget the maths, because buying a house isn't just a financial decision. Home ownership gives you stability. You can renovate, you don't have to ask the landlord whether you want to paint a wall, you can control how long you stay in the place. Renting, on the other hand, gives you a lot more flexibility. New job, you can move, relationship changes, you can move. You're also not putting hundreds of £1,000s into one property. The point of this video is I just want people to stop saying renting is throwing money down the drain, because it's not. You always have to look at your situation. You have to run through the math. And remember, sometimes renting wins. You have to take a look at the property you want to buy versus the property you could rent. At the end of the day, it's very dependent on your own circumstances. Me personally, renting actually makes more sense, whereas somebody else, buying makes more sense. Rent is definitely expensive, correct, but so is mortgage interest. At the end of the day, both is throwing money down the drain. So from this video, you have to take one thing away. There is no universal answer. You have to do the calculations yourself. You have to seriously do the research yourself, and you'll make the decision yourself. Because to be honest, you do need to look at the math when you are considering this. You need to figure out what sort of lifestyle you want. But remember, maths always comes first, emotion second, but do not ignore either. They both work hand in hand. So if you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot if you guys could subscribe. I will try to make some more videos around housing and property prices, etc. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you guys are doing. Do you guys rent? Do you guys buy? Have a great day. I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.